It's that time of year again, so we are going to talk about the state of buying a used camera. I've made a list of all of my favorite cameras for sale right now on the gray market, so if you're looking to make a camera purchase in the next year, I hope this is helpful. Grab a drink and we'll go ahead and get started. First up is Panasonic. I'm a pretty big fan of Panasonic. They do a good job of keeping prices low, but still pushing the industry forward. This year, I'm hoping for an EVA 2. It'd be really cool to get an update to the EVA 1. I think an S5 III might be cool. I think an S1H Mark II would be really, really cool. There's a lot of things that they could update or release. We have no idea what they're up to, and they've been quiet for a long time. So I think we're in for some cool stuff as far as Panasonic goes. With every new camera that's released, the older cameras lose a little bit more value and become cheaper and cheaper. So I've made a list of all my favorite Panasonic cameras on the gray market, and let's just jump into those really quick. First up is the Panasonic GH5. I did a review of the GH5 earlier this year or last year, depending on when you watch this. I think it's an amazing camera. You know when you grow up watching a movie that is the funniest thing in the world to you and then you revisit as an adult and it doesn't really stand up anymore? But then there's movies you revisit as an adult and they're just as good, if not better, like the Jim Carrey Grinch. The GH5 is kind of like that. I remember it being amazing back in the day, and when I revisited it for the review, it was absolutely incredible. The image quality is amazing. The low light isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. The noise pattern is great. The codec selection's amazing. The IBIS is amazing. Battery life is great. Build quality is great. When we hop into eBay, we're looking at sub $600 GH5S for $724. There's some kits for $1,000 with lenses, but I think in general we're looking at about $600, maybe a little bit less. $575 to get 10-bit 422 in a 4K body with IBIS that will be reliable for years and have a great lens mount so that you can adapt almost anything to it is a pretty good value proposition, if you ask me. Next is the GH6. I've never used the GH6. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that people that do use them tend to think that they're pretty awesome. And these have fallen in value pretty fast as well. You can pick one up for about $1,000. Let me see what we're looking at here. Right. This is the one that introduced the dynamic range boost. So we're looking at 4K 60, 422 10-bit. It does 5.7K. I also think this is when they added the ability to do focus mag while recording, which is, for me, the biggest problem with the GH5. When I'm using a small mirrorless body, the main way that I keep everything in focus is with focus magnification, since peaking tends to not be so great on little screens like this. I also think that the color science is better here on the GH6 versus the GH5, so that's something to keep in mind. And really quick, let's also jump in and do the GH7. They're about $2,200. They're pretty new, like I said, and we've only fallen a couple $100 in price. There's one for $1,800. There's some in here with lenses for $2,200. So you could shave off a little bit of cash on top if you want to pick up a GH7. Now, I really don't know what they've added here. Apparently 32-bit float. That's cool. ProRes RAW, is that internal? It is internal. Well, dang. Anyway, that's all the Micro Four Thirds stuff that we're going to cover. We also have the S5 and the S5 II and the S5 IIX. Let's start with the S5. If I'm not mistaken, this is the same sensor as the 2 and the 2X. And the original S5, you can pick up an S5 for $800. That is crazy. $900, $1,600 with lenses. The S5 has IBIS, it's full frame, you're doing 4K. I think it has some recording limits with like 4K 60. Maybe it has some recording limits with open gate, which by the way, it also does open gate. Woo, you can buy them new from B&H for $1,000. That's holiday savings though. I'm recording this right after Christmas, so I don't know if that's gonna come off or it's one of those permanent deal things. Dual native ISOs, UHD 4K 60, 10-bit recording. I haven't used the S5, but I have used the S5 II, and it is an amazing camera. I think they're pretty similar. The S5 II added some stuff. Decent battery life, fantastic camera. Let's look at the S5 II. Okay, we got 1600, we got 1400, 1500, 1400, 1400. New, they're about 1700, so it's still pretty new. It hasn't gotten a huge price reduction on the gray market, but you can save some money if you want to go the used route. If that's the case, I would bet that the X is the same. So we got 1800, 1600 for the X. I think it's only a couple $100 more. 2000. Dynamic range scores are fantastic. Readout is a bit slow in some of the modes, but you could crop in or just not whip pan with a 70 to 200. Depends on what kind of work you're doing. Both of them are amazing for most lines of work. Let's go to the S1. This was their first full frame mirrorless camera after the GH5. You can get these for $1,400, it looks like. That's pretty interesting. There's also the S1H. The specs on the S1H are still a little bit ridiculous. So 6K 24, we have 10-bit 422, DCI 4K, it does Vlog, it's got dual native ISO. I think it does open gate as well. The readout speed is not super fast again, but the dynamic range scores and latitude are very, very impressive. On eBay, we're looking at 1,800, 1,700, 1,600. I would love to review one of these this year. It's an amazing camera for the price. I got two more for Panasonic that are interesting. The EVA 1. I don't know if you guys remember the EVA 1, but it was their 5.7K Super 35 EF mount. You can buy one of these for less than $2,000 now. There's $1,900, $1,950. I'm also planning on reviewing this camera this year. I think it's a great buy for the price. It has all the features you would ever want in a dock style camera. My only question marks are around the image quality. I don't know how good the image will stand up all these years later, since it's definitely a couple years old at this point. But for $1,900, this could be an absolute steal if the image quality still stands up. All right, this is the one that I'm most excited about. If you're too young, you won't know that back in the day, the king on the block was the Panasonic VariCam LT. It was their cinema camera that sort of stood up against the Alexa Mini, the Alexa Classic, some of the red cameras of the time. It's this beautiful full-size cinema camera with an EF mount that's made of stainless steel, and it's heavy. I think it's like 6 pounds without any peripherals. You got this beef daddy top handle and this removable monitor right here. It shoots 4K DCI. I think it also shoots internal ProRes that's downsampled. You get ND filters, you got XLRs. The IO selection is nutty. Look at this. Look at all this stuff to plug in. So much fun. You got V mounts or gold mounts on the back. You can switch it. You can take off the EF mount and do PL. It's this big solid box. Everything is operated from this screen right here, and it has this separate operating system that reminds me a lot of Arri's operating system, which is super simple, very easy to use, very intuitive. This is also back in the day when Panasonic was famous for having some of the best color in the industry. There are tons of shows on Netflix and other streaming platforms that are shot on VariCam. There's theatrical releases that are shot on VariCam. Tons of movies that you've heard of were shot on this camera. It looks like they're more reliably up in the 2,000 to 3,000 range, depending on what kind of accessories you're getting. But if you got lucky and you picked up one of these for $2,000, I mean, yeah, look at this one. Look at this hard case. Oh, look at all that foam. Woo! Okay, so this is the VariCam 35. It's a sensor block and then the recording part, and they split. You see how there's sort of this section right here, and then there's this section. This only comes in PL mount. I don't know all of the differences between the two, but I'm diving into the research right now because I want to review this camera. This is a gem. This is a diamond in the rough as far as the gray market goes. This camera has the reputation, the image quality, the reliability, and now it's affordable, at least relatively affordable versus other cinema cameras that are operating at this level. Look at this thing. Oh, also, this used to be more of an issue if you wanted to buy a camera like this and you wanted to save some money, because a heavier camera means more support gear that's able to handle this kind of weight. But now there's heads and sticks that are available that aren't thousands of dollars a piece that you can pick up. I'm really, really excited about this camera. And that wraps it up for Panasonic. Next, we're going to Sony. There's enough Sony cameras out there to make yourself dizzy. So we're gonna go through these a little bit faster. First is the FX9, who is the current king on the block before you start knocking on the door of the Burano and the Venice, which I'm gonna go ahead and assume if you're watching this video, you're probably not gonna buy. Where you can probably pick up one of these for about $6,500. I'm seeing lower 6,000s. 7,000 in mint condition, 7,500. I haven't gotten my hands on it, but I've only heard great things. I think it's nearly perfect, besides maybe the readout speed. Form factor's awesome. Image quality is awesome. Let's go to the FX6. And here we're seeing 6,300. It looks like there's a little bit of a rig there. 5,000, 4,800, 5,000. You can buy one of these new for 6,000, I believe. 6,000 brand new. We're gonna talk about the FX9, 6, 3, and 30. And all of these cameras are in such high demand still, even though they're several years old at this point. But they're kind of the industry standard, so they've held on to their value very, very well. They're very popular in rentals, so you're not gonna save a whole bunch of money if you buy one of these used, but you can save a couple $100. There's some in here that are 5,000, 4,700. That's a little bit better than 6,000. Let's go to the FX3, which should be basically the same story. 3400, 3400. This one doesn't have a top handle, and it looks like it's 29. Brand new, these are, I think, 3700. What can you say about the FX3? It's like the industry standard for a mirrorless camera. They're super well built. Image quality is amazing. Low light's obviously amazing. The only thing I would complain about is that it doesn't have control over noise reduction. There's a little bit of internal noise reduction that makes stuff a little muddier than I would prefer. If they made an FX3 Mark II and there was either RAW or an option to get rid of noise reduction, I mean, what else could you possibly add to this camera to make it better? I've heard a lot of people say ND filters, which, yeah, that'd be amazing, but I don't see how they could add that to this form factor. I think what would be better would be a Sony FX4 or an FX5. That's sort of more of like a C70 body style, a little bit bigger, a little bit blockier, internal NDs, a great sensor. Please, the ability to turn off noise reduction, maybe even RAW, maybe even XOCN internally. But if you're wanting to buy an FX3, which is still a fantastic camera, you're looking at 3700 new, 3400-ish used. Now the FX30, which I do own, here she is right there. This is one of my favorite cameras of all time because in some ways, I think it's better than the FX3. Brand new, you can buy one for $1,600 without the top handle if you don't need that. If you need to add the top handle, then it jumps all the way up to $2,000. I think that the IBIS is a little bit better. I think that the noise performance is a little bit better. And to explain what I mean by that is not that there's less noise in the FX30, it's that the noise pattern itself is a little bit more granular, a little bit more even. It looks like there's less noise reduction happening internally, which I'm always a big fan of. You can buy these used for $1,400, $1,300, 15, 17. It's got the same exact body style as the FX3. They're identical. They are exactly the same, except for quarter 20s on top are black on the FX30, and they're silver on the FX3. It's the only way you can tell the difference, and the name, obviously. But it's Super 35 instead of full frame. I'm a big fan of Super 35. All my cameras are Super 35 and have been for a really long time. So if you're okay with not having a full frame sensor, I think this is easily one of the best cameras to buy on the market. It's got a fan inside, so you're not going to overheat. Image quality is fantastic. Dual native ISO, 10-bit 422 4K. You get Sony's excellent operating system, all of the assist features that go along with the Sony. This is hard to beat for sure. Now let's check on the A7S III, brand new. We're looking at $3,200, pretty pricey. Used, you're not real. We all know you're not real. 2400, 2400, 2200. Yeah, 2500. It's got the same exact sensor as the FX3 and FX6, so it's an awesome sensor. You have dual native ISOs. You can go all the way up to 12,800 and shoot clean images, get all the assist features. Autofocus is amazing, the IBIS is amazing, and it's the same image as the FX3. You can save a lot of money if you go with the A7S III, plus you get a viewfinder if you're into that. You can actually get that XLR unit that Sony sells and plug it into the multi-interface shoe and still get XLRs and use it with the A7S III. There's the cheaper sibling, the A7 IV, $2,100. Price has fallen a little bit from $2,500, and used, you can get one for $1,800, $2,000, $1,800, $1,500. It's got a higher resolution sensor as the A7S III, but has a worse readout speed. The readout is not great. When you're recording 4K, it's gonna downsample from I think 7K, which means that it's got tighter detail, maybe even tighter noise, so it's gonna have a little bit less noise perceivably, but it also means that the readout is much worse, so you'll have worse rolling shutter. A little bit of a trade-off. You also get to save some money. The A7C II, I've never used an A7C or a C2, but it's the same sensor as the A7 IV, but you can buy one for $1,800, $1,800, $1,700. It's just a different body style. It's smaller, maybe a little bit better for travel. I mean, look at that thing, it's adorable. Single card slot, it overheats easier. All right, let's switch things up and do the FS7. Just reviewed the FS7. It's really, really impressive. It's got all of the ins and outs that you would want in a cinema camera, internal NDs. The image is pretty good. You have to work a little bit in the grade, but that's not that big of an issue. It's a beautiful body style. Ergonomically, it's awesome. And these things are all the way down in the $1,400 range, $1,300, $1,300. And it also has a younger brother, the FS5, which is even cheaper, $1,300. Oh, wait a second. $1,300 for the Mark II, $840 for the original, $1,000. So you could probably buy one of these for about $1,000. Sony's color science wasn't quite as good as it is now back when these cameras were released. So like I said, you'll have to spend a little bit of extra time in your grading suite. but that's not that big of a deal. There are ways to work around it, especially with some of Resolve's new tools like the color slice, which is really, really great at pushing things around to make them a little bit more pleasing. Buying a camera with internal NDs and professional ins and outs for like $1,000 is a great value proposition. The A7 III, about $900. Full frame, 4K, 8-bit 420, if I remember correctly. The readout speed is not great at all. You're getting Sony E-mount, so there's lots of lenses to choose from. Battery life is really great. Last but not least is one of the best buys currently, and that's the A6700. It's got the same sensor as the FX30. You're gonna gain a viewfinder, but you're gonna lose the dual card slots, the cinema operating system, and what else do you lose? Oh, the fan. So this thing has a better chance of overheating. You got 10-bit 422 4K that is downsampled. It looks amazing. The noise pattern's amazing. You can shoot great, clean, low-light images. You get Sony E-mount. Battery life is awesome. There's a lot to love here, and they're looking like they're priced around $1,300, $1,400. Definitely not bad for what you're getting. Oh yeah, Fujifilm. There's the X-T3. I owned the X-T3 for a while and really liked it. You got like $800, $900. The X-T4 adds IBIS and a bigger battery and a tilt screen. Wait, not a tilt screen. It fully articulates. Looks like $1,500, $1,400. There's now an X-T5 that I have not used. $1,400 also, interesting. $1,900, $1,600, $1,400. All great cameras. I think they all have basically the exact same image quality. Maybe the X-T5 adds something. Like I said, I haven't used it. What I really love though is the X-H2S. My only thing with Fuji cameras is that they tend to shoot overly sharpened and kind of digitally processed looking images to me, which is kind of a shame. Maybe you don't feel that way, that's totally fine, but almost every Fuji camera I've ever shot with, I've owned the 3, the 4, and I rented their X-H2S for a while to do a review. The footage just looks a little bit digital to me. If Fujifilm was able to fix that this year and enable RAW or work on something at the sensor level to make it look a little bit less processed and we could get a softer, noisier image out of Fujifilm. I know that seems counterintuitive, but I think we'd be better off if we could get something a little bit less processed. The X-H2S is a camera that I would own if you could shoot RAW on it. Looks like 1800, 1900, 1800, 1900, 3000 with lenses and batteries. This is a phenomenal camera. The features in it are insane. There's also the X-H2. Don't know a lot about that. I think it's higher resolution. Maybe it shoots 8K. Not a whole lot of them for sale. Oh, this dude's selling a bunch of lenses with it. Now we have Canon, and usually the gray market for Canon is a gold mine. So first of all, the original Canon C300 is $800, $900, which is very similar to the C100. Oh my goodness, they're so cheap now. $600, $600, still an awesome camera. It only shoots 1080p. And it's super highly compressed. The data rate is like nothing. It's like 24 megabits per second. But it's still an awesome camera. Ergonomically, you get internal NDs. There's also the Mark II. I think the image quality is a little bit better. You get 60 FPS and the screen tilts. So there's a little bit of a redesign in the body. And that's like $800. Great camera. Super fun to use. Very big fan for the price. Now there's the C70. I think the C70 is easily one of the best cameras on the market right now, still, even after the C80. The only things that irk me about it are the build quality. There's the hinge that breaks and it feels plasticky and breakable to me. And also, I don't own one personally because the ergonomics aren't what I'm looking for. I like a much bigger, heavier camera, which is why I use an Ursa. That's just better for the way that I shoot. But if I needed a smaller camera and I wanted the best image quality possible, the C70 is almost impossible to beat because of the DGO technology. It shoots RAW internally. The readout isn't even that bad. I think it's 15 milliseconds, but the dynamic range is massive. Super hard to beat at this price range. And I think when it was first announced, it was like $5,000, maybe $5,500, which was pretty expensive, but I think deserved. But at this point, you can buy them for $2,600, $3,000, $3,000. $3,000. Spending $3,000 to get one of the best images you could possibly get right now out of a digital camera feels like a good move to me. The original EOS R is like $800. $800. R6II, 1600, 1700. It shoots C-Log 3. I wish it had C-Log 2, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't overheat, or at least it tends to not overheat. Not as bad as the original R6. Blackmagic. The Ursa 4.6K G2. G32. You guys heard of that one? The Ursa 4.6K G2, you can buy for $2,300 these days. I owned one for a while. It's one of my favorite cameras of all time. Most of the experience I have in my career was spent holding one of these, just hundreds and hundreds of hours shooting live shows with this. They're incredibly reliable. The ergonomics are perfect. The image is fantastic. So hard to beat for the price. $2,300. They're like 5 or 6 pounds, body only. It's my favorite body style of all time. Throw a V-mount on there, you have a top handle, and if you have a lens that's weighted correctly, it's just beautiful. You need plenty of light to shoot with a camera like this, but it's got NDs, Blackmagic RAW. I mean, what else is there to say? It's amazing, amazing camera. I owned one for a while, but recently I switched to an Ursa Broadcast G2. Now, if you don't know, which most people don't, it's a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K sensor inside of an Ursa body, which is even better for me. I find myself needing a little bit more sensitivity than the 4.6K could give. It's got a gyroscopic sensor inside, so you get gyro stabilization in post. Still Super 35. Dynamic range is similar, but the latitude I think is even a little bit better because the noise pattern is very fine. There's not a lot of color shifting. There's no fixed noise pattern. I love this camera. I bought mine for $2,500 I think, and it looks like they're a little bit more expensive than that. I think I got a really good deal. $3,300. The 4.6K G2 is hard to beat, and this is one of the only things that I think can stand toe-to-toe with it, especially for the price that I got it at. New, they're $4,200. Let's run through all the Pocket Cinema cameras. 4K, which also just got a price drop. They're only $1,000 new. Used, you can buy one of these guys for $700, which you still get Blackmagic RAW, dual native ISOs. It is micro four thirds lens mount and size sensor, but you can still shoot fantastic images with it. It's not gonna hold your hand and have autofocus and IBIS or anything like that. You're gonna have to rig it up a little bit and learn how to use it, but the image you can get out of this camera for $700 is quite possibly the best image you can get for $700. Let's do 6K, $1,300, $1,800 for the Pro, which adds ND filters, a tilt screen that's super bright. G2 EF for $1,400. That's the same sensor I have over here, and it's one of my favorite sensors of all time. It's basically perfection except for the readout speed, but you can help with the readout speed if you have the gyroscopic metadata and then you go into resolve and you stabilize at 0%. It doesn't really stabilize the shot, but it'll correct some of the rolling shutter. Whoa, this one has a mod on it. Look at this screen. Oh, that's a V-mount. That is nasty. That looks so cool. Anyway, highly recommended. Any of the 6Ks will be good buys. Okay, let's talk about Arri, which I know sounds ridiculous, but there's 2 Arri cameras that are, dare I say, affordable at this point, and that is the Arri Alexa Classic, which was released in 2010. It is an absolute monster, but still has the LF3 sensor that we all know and love. That hasn't even been updated since the Alexa 35. So this is probably the second best sensor available, and you can buy them for $3,200. Now don't get too excited because, like I said, this camera is gigantic, so you're gonna need the proper support for it. I think it's like 15 pounds. It's a monster. Really heavy, obviously reliable, shoots a beautiful image. You're gonna need a ton of batteries, it's power hungry, it's only PL mount. I don't know if you can change that. Maybe you can mod it somehow to have like an EF. And the other problem is that it takes these really bizarre old proprietary Sony cards that are stupid expensive. But if it's image quality at all costs and you want a classic cinema camera, this is the way to go, man. Last one for Arri is the Amira. If I ever say anything is my dream camera and it's not the Amira, I'm lying to your face, because this is the camera that I've always dreamed about owning. It has the LF3 sensor, the same as the Alexa Classic, but it takes CFast instead of the other proprietary cards. It's got more audio controls and it has internal NDs. It's quite literally the perfect camera. And they're down to $11,000, which is quite a big reduction from what they used to be when they launched. Still way too expensive for my blood, but maybe one day. Last but not least, we have Red. Red cameras lose value like crazy, so this should be fun. The Red Komodo. You can buy the original Komodo for $3,600. Here's an entire kit for $5,000. Global shutter 6K, Super 35. Amazing sensor, widely adopted. I mean, everybody loves the Komodo. There was also a price drop on these. What are they at now? New. $5,000. Komodo X is $7,000. Used, you can get a Komodo X for Well, looks like they're mostly kits, so you're not really going to save a bunch of money if you're just trying to buy the brain. But these are good entry points into the DSMC3 ecosystem, the Red ecosystem, is if you just look up Red DSMC2. We're on DSMC3 right now. That's the current body style. This is the older body style, but you can find some really great cameras in here. Remember when everything was shot on the Helium 8K? This thing is $6,000 now. Look at that. That thing was probably 20 grand or more back in the day. Here's a Dragon X for 5,300. A Monstro 8K VistaVision. That sounds scary. There's a lot to find in here. I honestly don't know a whole lot about Red cameras, but there's a lot of DSMC2 camera bodies that shoot amazing images. Anyway, guys, that was a lot of cameras. I'm sorry if I didn't cover a camera that you were wanting me to cover. I hope this was helpful if you're looking to buy a new camera in the new year. And remember, it's not always about the camera. It's more so about lights. It's about lenses. It's about your storytelling and all that other gooey stuff. If you're trying to buy a camera, look into buying used cameras. I think buying used is the way to go. I'm pretty sure every camera I have ever bought myself has been used. You just have to be careful when you're on eBay or anywhere else. Make sure that it's from a reputable buyer. If you're on Facebook Marketplace, then Godspeed to you, man. I've been scammed so many times on Facebook Marketplace. Make sure you're meeting up with somebody, make sure it's in a good spot. And if you're buying on eBay, make sure, like I said, it's a good buyer. Maybe it's worth buying from somebody that accepts returns. Just do your homework and make sure that you don't get yourself scammed out of the money that you're trying to spend on a camera body. Have some fun shooting projects this year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.